The Ryan and Ryan Power Hour podcast on SportsTownChicago.com. Welcome back to Ryan and Ryan here on SportsTownChicago.com. This is the Ryan and Ryan Power Hour here. I'm Ryan Stuprich.
And I'm Ryan Risky.
And we are now going to take a look. Well, we'll take a look at the NCAA tournament, as this is day 2 of that. Technically, this is the second round, even though I sort of consider it the first round still, because those 4 play-in games aren't really a round necessarily. One game has gone final, and that would be New Mexico State losing to Kansas 75-56. New Mexico State was 13-1 in the WAC conference. I think that's the Western Athletic Conference. So
wow.
So they were pretty good, but when you reach a Big 12 team like Kansas, the number 2 seed, it's tough to beat. And they lose by 19, I think, if I'm doing my math correct. 75-56, that's a 19-point difference. Okay. Michigan State and Georgia currently playing right now. 8 minutes left in the second half. Michigan State is up by 11, 54-43. So hopefully they can hold on and win, as I have them winning. And I had Kansas winning that game, as I'm sure most of you did. As far as yesterday was concerned, if you're looking at the Sweet 16, which the Sweet 16 will be set after this Sunday, the Sweet 16 will be set. So far, I only have one team in the Sweet 16 that will not make it, and that would be Iowa State, as they got upset in the first round. Other than that, all 15 other teams that I have in the Sweet 16 are have either advanced to round number 3 or have not yet played. So that's it. My Sweet 16 consists of Kentucky, Maryland, Butler, Kansas, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Xavier, Arizona, Villanova, Northern Iowa, who's playing right now, and they are up by 10 on Wyoming, Providence, Virginia, Duke, Georgetown, Iowa State, and Gonzaga. If you can tell, my bracket is very Big East heavy. As I have every team but St. John's moving on to at least the Sweet 16 from the Big East Conference, all 6 teams that made it. I have St. John's actually losing their first game, one because I hate them, but they're playing San Diego State, and I have them losing to San Diego State.
San Diego State's an underrated school.
Yes,
they're usually really good every year.
They were really, really good. I think 2 years ago they made it to the Elite 8 or Sweet 16. They have a really good veteran coach. They get some good young talent on the West Coast that you wouldn't really expect.
Yeah. The year that they went to the Elite 8, I actually had them going to the Final Four.
I had them going really far. I don't think I had them going that far. I think I had them going to the Sweet 16, so they exceeded my expectations. But they are definitely a team to watch out for. They play in a tough conference out there in the West. They're either in the West Coast Conference, the WCC, or they're in the there's another conference out there too, like the Big West or the Big Sky. I don't know. There's so many conferences. It's kind of ridiculous, but yeah, that's how it goes. The games I lost yesterday. The games I lost yesterday would have been Cincinnati and Purdue. Purdue ended up losing in overtime. I was listening to it on the radio on my way home from here last night. Purdue, man, they really screwed up. They had the game intact, and they let Cincinnati score a layup at the buzzer to tie it, to bring it to overtime. So I lost that game.
I told you Purdue was going to lose.
Yeah, you did say that on Sports Renegades. And,
I said that last night. They were going to lose.
West Virginia, and they play later today against the University of Buffalo. Maryland plays today. Maryland and Valparaiso play today. The Butler Bulldogs moved on to round 3, so I got that right. They beat Texas. Notre Dame beat Northeastern. I have that moving up. So that's a big matchup of 2 teams from the state of Indiana, Notre Dame and Butler. I have the Butler Bulldogs moving on because I like them more, and I hate the living guts out of Notre Dame. But Notre Dame will be not heavy favorites, but they'll be favorites in that game. I'm going to take the hot shooting team of Butler. I think they'll be able to handle Notre Dame in upset fashion. Because
Butler has a tendency to not show up in big games with their shooting bricks the whole game.
That's true.
Hence the NCAA title game 2 straight years when they
Right.
or they set the record for worst shooting percentage ever in the title game.
They went to the title game. I think they lost to North Carolina that year.
They lost to Duke one year.
Duke. It was
that was
Duke.
I
It
had
was Duke.
Duke winning it on my bracket that year.
Yeah, it was Duke. That guy, he put, it was Gordon Hayward, who's on the Utah Jazz now. He put up that 3 at the buzzer.
That missed.
It was really
that
close.
half
though.
court.
Wow. That would have been something.
That was one of the few years I was actually like really watching all the college basketball games. It was mostly I was watching all the Duke games because I had Duke winning it all, and I like Duke.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Duke, but a lot of it has to do. And anytime DePaul has a nationally televised game, the announcer always makes the mistake at least once of calling, instead of the DePaul Blue Demons, he calls them the DePaul Blue Devils, and that just really bugs me because that's Duke's name, the Duke Blue Devils. Speaking of Devils and Demons, there's also the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, and there's also the Northwestern State, which is somewhere in Louisiana. Northwestern State, I think they're the Demons or something too. So it's really kind of confusing that there's so many like demons and devils and whatever. Going back to the bracket, Wichita State plays today against Indiana. Kansas and New Mexico State, that one final. I have Kansas. So I have a Sweet 16 matchup of Kansas and Butler if that happens. Wisconsin plays later today. But going back to the games that I missed out on VCU and Ohio State. I picked VCU. Ohio State won in overtime. I thought about putting Ohio State, but I'm like, Shaka Smart and VCU, they're going to make a little bit of a run, at least for a game or two. But their next game would have been against Arizona, and there's no way they would have beaten Arizona. So I do have Arizona winning against Ohio State. Well, now it'll be Ohio State, moving on to the Sweet 16. Xavier in the Big East had a pretty easy win. They're going to face off against Georgia State now, so we'll see what happens there. And then just if you look on the other side, there's a lot of games that are on today on the other side, for sure. But that Iowa State loss was really bad. And out of those two matchups, because it was the winner of SMU versus UCLA will play the winner of Iowa State and UAB on Saturday. And I had Iowa State and SMU playing each other, but it's the complete opposite. It's UCLA against UAB. So who would have thought of that? But my Final Four, again, I have Maryland making a run. I have Maryland beating Valparaiso today, beating West Virginia on Sunday, beating Kentucky. That's right. I have them beating Kentucky in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I
have
don't
Kentucky
think that's
losing.
going to happen.
I have Kentucky losing in the Sweet 16. I didn't want to put Kentucky and Kansas together because I feel like that's just way too common. Kentucky and Kansas, 1-2. So I have number 4 Maryland making a little bit of a run. They do have the best player in the Big Ten besides Frank Kaminsky.
Who is the best player then?
His last name is Trimble. I forget his first name. Something Trimble or Trumbull.
It's
something.
not Jaleel Okafor?
No, I'm talking about in the...
in that part of the bracket.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I thought Jaleel was one of the top players in the nation.
Well, the player that's going to win Player of the Year is actually on the Wisconsin Badgers. Frank Kaminsky is going to win Player of the Year. He's had a better year than Jaleel Okafor.
Is he going to... Do you know if do we have any word if he's entering the NBA draft?
He should enter the NBA draft, and he probably will be drafted.
I'm sure Jaleel will.
Yeah, I'm sure he will be drafted. So I have Maryland against Kansas in the Elite Eight, and I have Maryland beating them, moving to the Final Four. So that's a little interesting. That's the only main upset Final Four team I have. I have Wisconsin going to the Final Four, beating Arizona for the second straight year in the Elite Eight. Although I don't know how likely that is. I have Georgetown making a run, beating Duke in the Sweet 16, and moving on to the Elite Eight against Gonzaga, where I have Gonzaga moving on to the Final Four. And in the East, I have Villanova versus Northern Iowa and Providence against Virginia in the Sweet 16. I have Providence and Villanova moving on. So a Big East matchup between Providence and Villanova in the Elite Eight, with Villanova moving on, just like they did in the Big East tournament in the semifinals. They beat Providence. They hung out and beat them. So it's really going to be interesting to see what happens with all the games today. And then Saturday and Sunday, there's a little less games. Like, I think there's only 8 games each. 8 games Saturday, 8 games Sunday. So, yeah. But right now, West Virginia has a 14-7 lead over Buffalo. That game, 13 minutes left in the first half. With 4:48 left in the second half, Michigan State has a 10-point lead over Georgia, 60-50. And at halftime, Northern Iowa has an 11-point lead over the University of Wyoming, 35-24. We are going to take our final break, and then we will come back and talk about baseball. We're leaving this last segment all open for the Cubs and the White Sox, and they play each other tonight. And we'll talk more about the MLB in general. You're listening to Ryan and Ryan Power Hour here on SportsTownChicago.com. The Ryan and Ryan Power Hour podcast on SportsTownChicago.com.